Everyone carries a shadow. Jung warned us with those words. And the more you deny it, the darker it becomes. You don't have to believe him right away. Just remember the time you snapped with a cruel remark when you meant to smile. The time you saw someone succeed and for a split second wished they would stumble. The time you said you were fine while your heart raced and your chest tightened like it was in a vice. Those moments were not accidents. That was your shadow finding a way to speak. You learned to hide it very early. You were told that anger is bad, that crying is weakness, that asserting yourself is rude. So you began to stuff those parts away, one by one, into a suitcase in your mind. Lock it and pretend it wasn't there. But the suitcase never stops getting heavier. It rattles every time you suppress yourself. It leaks into your dreams, into the quiet fatigue you can't explain, into the sudden urge to sabotage the very things you care about. The danger is not that the shadow exists. The danger is that you believe you don't have one. And when an entire society convinces itself of that lie, the collective suitcase bursts open. Jung called it the collective shadow. That is where war, violence, and destruction are born. Not from devils outside, but from millions of people who think they are innocent. This video is not here to frighten you. It is a reminder. The shadow inside you is not just a burden. It is the very place where your destiny takes shape. If you dare to open the suitcase, you will not only find the pieces you rejected, but also the strength you have never known. If you don't open it, it will open you. You think your suffering comes from work pressure, from people who don't understand you, from a society drowning in endless expectations. But Jung pointed to a harder truth. Most of the pain doesn't come from outside. It comes from the split within you. It's that moment when you smile in a crowd but feel a lump in your throat that no one notices. It's when you scroll through social media, see someone succeed, feel a flicker of envy, push it away immediately, yet your body still tightens as if strangled. It's when you nod yes to a favor while your heart races, chest heavy, and later that night you lie awake with an anger that has nowhere to go. These reactions are not harmless. There are signs that your shadow is demanding a voice. The more you deny it, the deeper it burrows, turning into chronic anxiety, sleepless nights, unexplained exhaustion, and even self-hatred. You try to rationalize. Everyone feels that sometimes. But the truth is, it's already a loop. You suppress, the shadow accumulates. You hide, and it looks for cracks to leak through. Then you blame yourself, promise to control it better, only to fail again. Jung called this self-created fate, when the unconscious leads your life without you even knowing. Your pain isn't just scattered events. It's the result of living half alive, appearing fine on the outside, breaking on the inside. You trust the masks you wear, but the shadow waits patiently for the moment you slip, so it can take over. And if it only ended in exhaustion, you might still endure it. But Jung warned, the real danger begins when an entire community, an entire generation, denies its shadow. That's when what you think is just a flicker of envy or a burst of anger merges into collective brutality. You see the signs every day: resentment spilling across social media, baseless blame, indifference to the suffering of others. That is the shadow, no longer yours alone, but swelling into a collective darkness. And if you keep turning away, you won't just lose yourself, you will add your share to the loss of the world. The shadow spreads in silence. Jung once said, "What is not brought to consciousness will return as fate." He didn't mean this as a metaphor, but as a psychological law. Darkness doesn't disappear when you deny it. It simply finds ways to control you from beneath. You think you're choosing freely, but in truth, the unconscious is holding your hand. leading you back into familiar loops. Notice how often you choose the same kind of person to love, only for the relationship to end with the same script. You switch jobs, but after a while, the boredom, the feeling of being undervalued, the self-doubt always return. You think circumstances are to blame, but Jung saw a deeper truth. It is the shadow arranging it all. It is the part of you that you refuse to admit. Selfishness, fear, anger, envy. And when you deny them, they don't vanish. They find back doors to appear. In psychoanalysis, Freud believed that repressed impulses would find other outlets. But Jung went further. He said the shadow is not just repressed desire, it is the whole of your disowned personality. It holds not only what you reject as bad, but also the power you haven't dared to live, the assertiveness you once thought was rude, the creativity you feared others would laugh at. The shadow does not just contain poison, it holds potential. And here lies the paradox. The same place can both consume you and save you. Imagine you always avoid anger. You fear it will destroy your image of kindness, so you smile, you yield, you swallow it down. But hidden in that anger is a seed. The ability to defend yourself, the ability to say no, the ability to draw boundaries. By rejecting all of it, you lose the chance to use the energy you need to live truthfully. That's why the shadow is both enemy and treasure. The problem is not to eliminate it, but to face it and bring it to light. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming whole. It is not about being perfect, it is about being real. It means you dare to see both the good and the bad, the bright and the dark. This wholeness gives you a rare strength. You are no longer manipulated by what you deny. When others blame you, mock you, or accidentally press your fears, you don't collapse because you have already faced them yourself. Jung's philosophy may sound cold, but it is brutally practical. If you refuse to descend into your own cellar, you will drag the whole world into that darkness instead. History has shown this. When a nation denies its own shadow, it does not disappear. It mutates into collective frenzy, war, genocide. That's why Jung's warning was not just for individuals, but for humanity as a whole. Because a single person who refuses to face their shadow inevitably strengthens the collective shadow we all must live with. And here is where you must pause and reflect. The shadow you are denying today may be exactly what you will see reflected tomorrow, in the eyes of others and in the society around you. The shadow within shapes the world. Darkness doesn't appear out of nowhere. It grows out of the times you learn to stay silent. As a child, one frown from an adult was enough to make you swallow your tears. When you felt anger, they told you it was bad, so you learned to bury it. When you tried to express yourself, someone cut you off, so you smiled and let it go. Each of those moments was another item stuffed into the suitcase. It didn't vanish. It sat there, growing heavier, waiting for the day it would burst open. Jung called this the unconscious loop. The harder you try to construct a mask of politeness, the stronger the hidden opposite becomes. The more you strive for control, the more the shadow waits to make you lose control. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It finds cracks to surface. In drunkenness, in anxiety, in moments of exhaustion, and you panic, saying, "That wasn't me." But the truth is, it was you, the part you never dared to claim. The shadow doesn't stop at personal reactions. When many people deny it together, it grows into a collective shadow. That's when societies start blaming others, creating imaginary enemies, and justifying cruelty. Nazi Germany wasn't born from a supernatural demon. but from millions of ordinary individuals denying their own shadows. And once they let the shadow lead, they committed the very acts they once swore to hate. Jung warned, "Whoever does not face their own darkness will be possessed by it." The most terrifying part is this: you can become exactly what you despise without realizing it. The person who prides themselves on being kind can turn ruthless. The one obsessed with self-control can spiral into frenzy. This is the unconscious at its most dangerous. It strips away your identity and replaces it with the very thing you once vowed never to be. Yet Jung also revealed a paradox. Within the shadow lies not only poison, but power. It stores the energy you've locked away: assertiveness, creativity, survival instinct. If you dare to enter, you don't just prevent destruction, you reclaim lost strength. If you refuse, the shadow will go on writing your life for you, through every burst of anger, every repeated choice, every silent failure. And if you stay until the end, you will face a truth almost no one dares to accept. The shadow is not only the most dangerous part of you, it is also the only key to your real freedom. The shadow is the one writing your fate. Imagine in the familiar room where you live every day, there is an old suitcase. It's not far away. It lies right under your bed, where your feet brush against it every morning as you wake. On the outside, it's covered in thick dust, carrying a faint musty smell that creeps into your nose whenever you bend down. You always avoid pulling it out, because even the sight of it sends a weight rising in your chest. And yet, the suitcase doesn't disappear. It waits for you, patient like a memory that refuses to sleep. This suitcase swells a little more each day. You get angry with a colleague but smile instead, and the suitcase swallows that rage. You feel envy when someone else is praised, but quickly tell yourself, "I don't care," and the suitcase absorbs a shard of bitterness. You feel sadness but pretend you're fine, and the suitcase devours another damp cloth. Over time, it becomes so heavy that you carry it with you everywhere without even realizing. But the suitcase is not silent. It leaks into your daily life, in the sighs you release when you're alone, in the sleepless nights staring at the ceiling, in the tightness in your chest when someone mentions what you tried to forget. It slips into the way you treat others. You snap at loved ones over something small. You avoid an embrace for fear you might break down. You go quiet when you need to say no. That's the suitcase bleeding into your life, reminding you that you cannot lock it away forever. And the most haunting part is its silent presence. The more you try to ignore it, the more it becomes a shadow, always following you. Even as you smile, work, or love, somewhere deep inside you know you're carrying something that has never been opened. That silent knowing drains you more than any task, because it consumes all the energy you spend on hiding. Jung never told us to throw it away. He insisted, it is part of you, and the only way to stop being haunted is to dare to open it. Yes, when you pull the zipper, you will face the things you fear most: anger, jealousy, memories you denied. But at the same time, you will uncover what you had lost: the strength to defend yourself, the creativity you buried, the courage you never knew you had. How many times have you cleaned your home, thrown out the old, and stumbled upon something you thought was gone forever? A photo, a letter? Opening the suitcase is the same. Beneath the dust, you will find pieces of yourself, the parts abandoned out of fear. No one can do it for you. That suitcase will only open when your own hands pull the zipper. And if you keep it shut, remember, you are not just living with a rejected part. You are letting your entire life be directed by what you never dared to face. The shadow you avoid is the heaviest baggage you carry. Take a moment to look at yourself in recent days. Was there a time you nodded yes to help someone while your throat tightened, your heart pounded, and moments later you felt a quiet anger for not daring to say no? Was there a time you scrolled through social media, saw a friend succeed, and for a fleeting second, a bitter taste rose before you quickly covered it with a forced smile? Or when you heard praise given to someone else, and in that instant, your chest clenched as if something was being taken away from you? Those small moments are the shadow leaking into your everyday life. You might excuse it. Everyone feels that way sometimes. But the truth is, these reactions are not harmless. They stack up, turning into habits. You get used to saying, "It's fine," while your chest feels heavy. You get used to smiling politely to avoid conflict, then lying awake at night with the feeling of being used. You get used to holding the mask of being agreeable, only to explode at the people closest to you, the ones who did nothing wrong. Each time you think you've kept control, the shadow is only waiting for another moment to spill out. Jung warned, if you don't face it, the shadow will live for you. It decides how you react, chooses the relationships you enter, and writes the script for failures that repeat themselves. You'll keep falling for the same type of partner, keep missing crucial opportunities, keep ruining what you truly value, all because the suitcase inside remains locked. And what's even more frightening, the shadow doesn't stop with you. It spills into the lives of those you love. They carry the weight of your misplaced resentment, the coldness of your exhaustion, the eruptions you can no longer contain. If you continue living this way, you won't just lose yourself. You'll pass that same locked suitcase to those who come after you. And you already know, this world has more than enough shadows. What it needs is not another suitcase left shut, but someone willing to open it. If you don't face it, the shadow will live your life for you. You've been taught to see the shadow as an enemy, something to suppress or erase. But that belief is exactly what leaves you exhausted. Jung insisted, the shadow is not meant to be destroyed, but integrated. Picture it differently. Instead of a stain, imagine it as a locked room in the house of your soul. The room is dusty, full of cobwebs, thick with the smell of dampness. But inside are objects of value you once abandoned. Your task is not to demolish the room, but to clean it and make space to live in it. The moment you change the way you name it, the shadow shifts shape. Anger is no longer simply bad, but a signal. You've reached your limit. Envy is no longer shameful, but a sign. You're longing for something you haven't dared to claim. Selfishness is no longer small-minded, but a reminder. You too need care. This new language doesn't sugarcoat. It translates. It turns the shadow into a messenger. And once you understand the message, you regain the power to choose. Try this experiment. The next time irritation rises, instead of thinking, "I'm awful," ask, "What is this anger trying to protect?" The next time jealousy surfaces, instead of drowning in shame, ask, "What desire is this pointing me toward?" With nothing more than a shift in words, you realize the shadow isn't a saboteur. It's a courier, carrying news about the parts of you still unlived. Jung whispered a warning. What you reject will live in your place. But he also revealed a way forward. If you learn to dialogue, the shadow becomes an ally. It returns strength you thought was gone, creativity you never tapped, assertiveness you once feared showing. This is reframing at its core, transforming the shadow from enemy into treasure. The language you use with yourself matters more than you think. Every time you say, "I'm weak," you fasten another lock on the suitcase. Every time you dare to say, "I need to be heard," you slide the zipper open a little more. Each time you scold yourself, "I'm selfish," you lose the chance to set a boundary. But every time you admit, "I need protection too," you reclaim ownership of your life. Now imagine this. If today you began to shift your words, the suitcase would stop groaning in the night. Memories would no longer haunt you, but become data you can interpret about who you are. Your relationships would ease because you'd stop unloading your unconscious shadow onto others. Most importantly, you'd hear your inner voice again, the one buried for years under the dust of denial. Here is the whispered warning. If you don't learn a new language, the shadow will keep speaking for you in a distorted voice. But if you choose to listen differently, you'll discover something surprising. The place you feared most is the same place that holds your deepest strength. The language you choose decides who is writing your life. The shadow suitcase doesn't open with one grand act, but with small steps repeated. The first step, write it down. Whenever anger, envy, or shame rise, don't deny it. Record it exactly, as if you're pulling each item from the suitcase and placing it on the table. The second step, watch your body. When your chest tightens, your shoulders stiffen, and your stomach knots. Treat it as a signal that the suitcase just swallowed more. Instead of ignoring it, breathe deeply and whisper, "I see you." The third step, carve out a moment of silence each day, simply to sit with yourself. In that stillness, you'll hear the faint rattling of the suitcase, and instead of fearing it, you'll learn to smile at it. If you want to go further, try a fourth step, selective sharing. Speak a piece of your truth to someone you trust, so the suitcase no longer hides alone in the dark. And finally, ask yourself before sleep, what does the suitcase want to show me tonight? Dreams will deliver fragments you've never dared to face. None of these steps transforms you instantly, but each time you write, breathe, listen, or share, you slide the zipper open a little more. And one day, you'll notice the suitcase no longer weighs on you the way it once did. Every small act is one more click of the lock undone. If you keep leaving the suitcase sealed, never daring to open it, the shadow will continue to control you from silence. It will show up in sleepless nights, in the exhaustion that greets you every morning, in sudden bursts of anger that wound the very people you love. And you'll grow used to blaming yourself, whispering, "I'll control it better next time," only to fall into the loop again. This is the cost of denial. You don't live by your own choices, you live by the script your shadow writes for you. But the damage doesn't stop with you. When one person's shadow remains unseen, it seeps into every surrounding relationship. Families suffer the weight of outbursts with no cause. Colleagues sense the quiet tension you carry. Children learn to hide their emotions, repeating the very cycle of repression you're trapped in. And when an entire community keeps its suitcases locked, Jung warned, that collective shadow grows into war, violence, and destruction. No one wants to believe it, yet history shows clearly the greatest evils are born from countless small acts of avoidance. If you dare to open the suitcase, the story changes. You don't become perfect, you become real. You know you carry anger, but you use it to set boundaries. You feel envy, but you turn it into fuel. You admit selfishness, but you balance it with care for others. Once brought into light, the fragments of shadow no longer haunt you. They transform into raw energy, a source of life. For the first time, you are no longer manipulated by what you refuse to face. The greatest quality you gain is wholeness. Jung called it wholeness, not a polished mask of virtue, but the union of light and dark. In this state, you walk lighter because you no longer strain to carry the locked suitcase. You see others differently because you know each person carries a shadow, and your empathy runs deeper. And the world becomes just a little lighter because you dared to start with yourself. Jung's closing philosophy is clear. There is no light without shadow. Freedom doesn't come from avoidance. It comes the moment you dare to open, to face, and to walk into it. The cost of denial is losing yourself. The reward of confrontation is finally living whole. Freedom only comes when you dare to open your shadow. Imagine yourself walking through an abandoned garden. The paths are covered in moss. Grass grows wild. And at the center stands an old well. Its stone walls are cracked, green with moss, and from deep within you hear the whisper of wind. For years, you've walked past it without daring to look down, afraid that all you'd find was darkness, afraid you'd be pulled under. But today, you stop. You lean over, and you see it. Not only shadows, but a faint glimmer at the bottom, shining like a lost star. In that moment, you realize the truth doesn't come from avoidance, but from the courage to face what you fear most. Darkness is not a void that swallows you whole. It is the canvas that allows light to be seen more clearly. You can turn away, keep walking the familiar path, pretend the well does not exist. Or you can pause, feel the breath of wind rising from its depth, and accept that what you've been searching for lies hidden in the very place you resist. Jung once said, "Freedom is not found in running away, but in taking responsibility for both your light and your shadow." When this video ends, try one small act. Sit in silence for a minute. Imagine yourself gazing into that well and whisper the name of a part of you that you've long abandoned. Light only reveals itself when you dare to look into the well.